All right, we're live. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm just waiting for people to kind of log in. I think Fatima, Elizabeth, and Sheikh Hamid are going to send about the link so that people can start logging in. So just give me a couple of seconds before things kind of settle down, and we'll get cracking with the topic of today's conversation. All in all, I hope you're well. You're practicing social distancing. I hope you're staying at home and avoiding any kind of public exposure to kind of combat this virus, inshallah. So here, this is for those of you who are wondering, I'm actually sitting in my balcony, and behind me is Dubai. So I don't know if you guys can see, but you see that very tall building at the back, the one that's, I mean, it's quite obvious. That is the Burj Khalifa right there. So that's the Burj. So we have a nice view from our balcony. Can I do a sound check, a video check? Can you guys tell me if you can hear and see me clearly? Again, just for those people who are wondering why I'm silent and not talking, it's because I'm waiting for Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery to send the link about. So I apologize. So just give me a couple of minutes and we'll hopefully get cracking. For those who just came in, can you just let me know if you guys can hear me? If the audio is clear and the video is fine? Is that, can anyone do just a check for me? Can you guys hear and see me? So if you could just type something in, like okay, then I've pretty much got the message that things are okay. Okay, audio and video both clear. Perfect. Thank you for confirming. All right, okay. Right, okay guys. So welcome to the second session of Islam and Science that is being hosted by Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery. I'd like to welcome all of you for joining us and taking out your time. I hope you found the first session useful, and I hope that today's session will also be useful. So just to give you an idea of the topic, I just try and select anything randomly for every week. Anything that's relevant so that people can kind of benefit from it. And I was a little bit stumped of what I wanted to do for this week. Mashallah, we had a lot of success with the first week, so I wanted to kind of capture something that was relevant to the audience around the world. And in the past few days, I've been seeing an increasing amount of interest in 5G, and particularly its relation to the coronavirus. So, and obviously you kind of get skeptical about the kind of points and information that is being shared and distributed on social media. So just to give you an example, when I first posted about this lecture on my personal Facebook page, Facebook flagged it as having false information, and I didn't mention any specific thing about 5G. All it had was just the word 5G in it. So it just goes to show how sensitive Facebook has become just to kind of battle any false information that's kind of being shared on social media. So I found that really funny. So I think 5G is obviously of great interest to some people, and it's causing a lot of controversy. So I just wanted to share some insight from the scientific side about what are the concerns around 5G, what kind of technology it is, etc. Right? It's don't worry if you don't have a technical background. I'm just trying to make this conversation, simple. And I have also got a link that Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery will share with you, which has scientific articles that have been published in the past 2 years, alongside 3 website links that will give you some kind of an idea in terms of what are some of the concerns with 5G as a technology. So we're talking about particularly human health concerns. So that's the particular conversation which we're going to try and entertain today, right? So let me first explain what 5G is. So I'm gonna just share my other camera so you can see a picture that I've uploaded here. So here we have something called the electromagnetic spectrum. So you see here you have low frequencies on the left hand side, and here you have high frequencies. And there's a division across the spectrum between non-ionizing and ionizing. Now, in very simple terms, what this means is that non-ionizing pretty much doesn't react or doesn't cause physical changes if it's exposed to your skin, right? But this kind of stuff will really alter your physical makeup. Let's just put it like that, very crudely put, right? And so if you have like 1,000 X-rays, so these are like X-rays that are somewhere here. If you have 1,000 X-rays, you will have some kind of permanent damage that can lead to radiation poisoning and what have you. So just keep that in mind, that spectrum, right? And here we have 5G right here. So to kind of give you some perspective, all technologies that we've had for the internet beforehand, so we're talking about 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, all of that is pretty much right behind this, so on this low frequency level, right? So 5G operates around the 30 gigahertz frequency range. That's where this range is. So 4G and all the way down to 1G is operating just before it, so it's operating on a lower frequency. And by frequency, we just mean how frequent it is, right? So you see, as you go here, it gets very frequent, like literally crazy. Here, it's much more relaxed. Now, the problem here is, right, that when we have 5G, because it's slightly higher on the frequency level, this is a slight cause for concern. And this is for several reasons. The first point that I want to establish is that as you increase the frequency of a particular wave, what you're actually doing, you're also increasing the energy. So the higher frequencies have much more energy associated with them. How and why that is, that's just according to laws of physics. We don't need to get into that, but just take it for now that as you have higher frequencies, it means higher energy is being pumped into you, right? So 5G is on the low non-ionizing side, so that means it's not as dangerous as these guys here, but it is relatively higher because 1 to 4G is in the lower range right here. So it has a slightly higher frequency and therefore a slightly higher energy associated with it. Now, why is this important? This is where we get to the conversation of standards. So with every technology, with every kind of new infrastructural change that's going to impact, any civilization, be it locally or globally, scientists and people who design policies have to come together to kind of set up criteria and a threshold to help guide people in how much they can use, right? And of course, there are going to be many stakeholders in this conversation. You're going to have, in this particular conversation, you're going to have experts from the engineering side of the technology. You're going to have experts from the medical side. So the medical expertise is needed because we need to see how the interface of this kind of technology will impact human health. And then based on those two scientific sides, you're going to obviously have a policy expert panel that's going to try and oversee all of these considerations and then try and develop some kind of system that can work for the country and the community, right? Now, when we had internet, the start of internet and what have you, all of this was pretty much standardized based on a few organizations and commissions, right? And they came up with a few criteria. This is back in 1960s, 70s, and 80s. This criteria was developed as soon as internet started getting much more commercialized, and as a result, they all, of course, used certain assumptions in developing these standards, which over time has become problematic. So one of the assumptions that people had, we're talking about a study that was done in 1989, as far as I remember. And the study was to try and determine what kind of frequency can we have for mobiles that is safe enough for it to be commercialized, right? So remember the frequency. This is how frequent the waves are, right? So when that happened, they made certain assumptions about what should the size of the head be, what should the density of the skin and the bone be, and therefore, based on those models, they determined the safety criteria. Now, those assumptions, unfortunately, were based on some dense military men who had, of course, biological features and makeup that do not necessarily resonate or work with the average person. And over time, we began to see how radiation, or basically these waves, when they come into contact with different people, particularly different age groups, they affect the radiation or the impact of the wave very differently. So to make sure that I'm being clear as possible here, whenever waves hit you, right, be it any part of your biological makeup, depending on the softness of the material that it's interacting with, that wave will probe into the material, right? Sometimes it'll be very low because the density is quite high. Sometimes it will probe in very deeply because the density of the material is very low. And now there have been studies to demonstrate, to show how when people use their mobile phones, it affects the different age groups drastically. So I'm going to share another picture with you so you can actually see this again from a scientific article, which Fatima Elizabeth has posted in a Google Drive link for you to read up on, right? So what I'm sharing with you is ref_7. So let me just go back to the photo. So here it is. So this is the photo that I want to share with you, okay? So if this doesn't make sense, that's fine. So what this shows is basically a top-down view of a skull of a 5-year-old. So imagine somebody is looking above you down onto your head, right? And you see this part here, this is the ear. So that's the left ear, and here is the right ear. So you're looking down on somebody's head, right? This is how much radiation entered the skull or that cranial makeup of a 5-year-old, right? That's how much entered. That's how much changed with a phone call. This is how much radiation occurred with a 10-year-old. And that is how much occurred with an adult. Now, this pattern should be obvious because as we grow older, our tissue, our bone density becomes higher. And as a result, we have less radiation impact on our head. But as you can see, the reason why I've pointed this out is because depending on these frequencies, depending on how much energy they contain, they will impact us biologically, but it will depend on our biological makeup and our age range. So now this is the heart of the conversation. With 5G being much more powerful and having a much higher frequency, what are the limits for which we can use it by? What are the guidelines and criteria? And I came into this study, as completely blind. Like I had no presumptions about the topic. I had no idea about how the topic will look like, what kind of studies I was going to find. And it seems that there have been extensive studies where these electromagnetic waves, even the non-ionizing ones, so I need you to remember, please remember this, right? So people generally assume that these are the dangerous ones, right? But there have been studies where even waves in this range can be harmful, okay? They can be harmful. And we have seen studies, again, these are all in the articles in the Google link, you can find them. There are clear scientific studies where non-ionizing, so the low frequency waves, can impact and are correlated to things like cancer, eye problems, tumors, and all sorts of other diseases, right? So now what this establishes, at least there is some kind of indication from a scientific perspective that there is a cause of concern when it comes to 5G. We already have skint data that shows us the kind of impact 4G, 1G, 3G, all of these different Gs have on human health, right? Now, the problem that scientists are raising through publications, bear in mind that the publications that I've sent you, these are scientific articles that have been published in the past 2 to 3 years. So the earliest one, the most recent one, is in 2020, right? So these are not old studies. These are very recent studies. And the cause of concern is that we are literally going in blind with the 5G technology. In short and very simple terms, what this means is that scientists are not comfortable with implementing a technology without understanding the biological effects it has on human health. As I mentioned before, we already have now a lot of data, even though it's relatively small, right? But we still have a lot of indications that 1 to 4G is generally having an impact on some kind of health problems. Now, I want to make a distinction between causal and correlational, right? To say something caused something is a very strong thing to say in science, right? So if you take a certain substance and immediately we see in every person who takes that substance, they get sick, then that's a cause, right? That's a very strong causal link. Correlation means, okay, so when a group of people take a particular substance and 60% of them show negative health and 40% of them don't, we say there's some kind of indication here. There's some kind of correlation here between taking the substance and people feeling ill. So it's not as certain as being causal, but it has varying degrees. You can have you can have zero correlation, you can have positive correlation, negative correlation. So what these studies are saying, that there is some kind of correlation that can be established, however minimal at this stage, through which we can be concerned about the implementation of 5G. Because of the higher energy levels required for this technology to work, and also bearing in mind that there are limitations with the studies we have so far, we need to first understand its health effects on the human being before we can fully implement it. Now, the conversation gets even trickier because scientists who have looked at some of the health effects of things like 1G, 2G, 3G, and 4G, the way they study these things is in a very limited fashion. And the reason why that is because imagine if you have a lab, right? And within that lab, most of the times these studies are done on rats and mice, okay? Now, the physiology of humans and mice are radically different. So to kind of say, or to kind of extrapolate the data from rat and mice to the human being is problematic, number one. Number two, these studies are, of course, short scale. What I mean by that is that they obviously test these things in a very small amount of time. But when we're using this technology constantly, right? So it's now becoming, I think it's a norm now. I think it's part of your life and breath to have your mobile phone on you all the time, to be, accessing your emails all the time. So internet is a fundamental feature of our lives now. So we don't have access to this thing for 30, 40 minutes. We have it nearly every hour for every day of our lives. So there is no proper study as of yet that studies the long-term effects of these waves on the human health. Now, all of this are limited concerns with technology prior to the 5G. Imagine how much more there should be concern of with 5G itself because of its higher energy levels. So that is where the issue of the concerns of human health is coming when it comes to implementation of 5G. Now, the studies do indicate, however, that when it comes to implementation of 5G, which is a new technology, bear in mind there is conflict of interest here. On the one hand, we have scientists who are worried about the health effects of these things. On the other hand, we have economic and political motivation to implement these things as fast as possible to uplift the economy, right, and the security and the other scientific implications this kind of technology may have. Because if we have this kind of tech, imagine everything getting faster, everything getting streamlined. Security will be, top notch because of the increasing internet access. We'll have much more data flow, much more economy, and etc., etc. So there is a conflict of interest here. Now, what's very interesting, as I was researching into this, I actually found that there is a website called the 5G Appeal. So let me show you this. So this is the 5G Appeal. So you can see 5gappeal.eu. And here we have a bunch of scientists, right? So you can actually go on their website and check it out yourself. In this website, we have scientists who are pretty much asking for massive amounts of funding from governments or whatever body that has an authority to come and fund studies to help us understand the impact of 5G on human health, right? Because if we do not do that, so just to make sure everyone's clear, it's 5gappeal.eu. It's also mentioned in the comments in case you want to see them. So what this body is simply calling for is to ask governments to stop being so quick with the implementation and fund studies that can help us understand this technology better and create much more sustainable studies before we can go in blind and just implement it haphazardly. Because it's better to understand what it can do now than later on when the damage has already been done. So this was my 2 pence on the whole subject of 5G. I wanted to just kind of give you some information because, of course, it's becoming of increasing interest. You hear conspiracy theories all the time now surrounding 5G, be it health, be it coronavirus. What I want you to take away from this, if anything, is that what we can get from this is at best that there is a lot of uncertainty involved in terms of the health effects. For that reason, we need to be a little bit cautious, and that's all that these studies are saying. So that's it for at least today's topic, or at least today's specific topic on 5G. A second point that I wanted to kind of mention to you guys, for those of you particularly who enjoy watching movies and series, there's a really, really good movie that I watched recently with my wife. It's called Contagion, and it's on Netflix. And I think it was published in 2011. I think that's when it came out. And it's a movie that where you have pretty serious A-list actors, and they try to show what it means to be in a pandemic. And it was modeled after the whole SARS scenario. So it's a very, very good one. It shows you the different agents involved in that kind of scenario, national bodies, political units, people on the ground, ambassadors, and what have you. So it pretty much touches every single person in the scale of the society. So it's definitely a good movie to check out. And at the end of the movie, what's very interesting, what I really liked about the movie, at the very end, they show you a possible scenario through which the SARS virus came out, or that virus in that movie came out. Sorry, Fatima Elizabeth, by published, I mean it came out, right? Published is just an academic term. It just means it's out there. That's all I'm trying to say. So that's it from my side for today. I hope you enjoy that and you benefited from that. Please do check out the links that we've posted so you can hopefully benefit from them and read them in your own time and make up your own conclusions. But definitely don't fall for extreme radicalism. At the same time, don't fall for extreme skepticism. Always keep a moderate mind. Understand what is being said, who is it being said by, and then make a healthy decision, an educated decision afterwards. It's very easy for us to be gullible in this information-centric world where every kind of information is thrown at us, and sometimes we just don't know how to filter, which is part and parcel of being in an information based worldview. So just keep an eye on that, and yeah, I hope you found this beneficial. So that's it from my side. I'll leave it to you guys. If you have any questions or comments, please do post them now. Otherwise, I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening to me. So I'm just gonna wait to see if there are any comments here. Let's see. No, okay. So has there been any studies on the impact 4G or even maybe have on the environment? So I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Aquifa. So one of the papers does actually look at the effect of wireless technology on the environment. Let me see if I have it here. Just 1 second. I think I have seen in one of the articles. So we uploaded 7 articles, and I think there's one of them that does look at the environment. uh, uh, check out ref_6. So I've labeled them. This is just my own labeling system. Ref_5. I think it's ref_5. They will. I think that might have it, if I'm not mistaken. Akifa. My mistake. Yeah, ref_5 should have it. Anything else? So the reason why they test on rats and mice is because there's a whole ethical concern about using humans as test subjects sometimes. And remember, lab and mice are the easiest subjects to kind of analyze and base their data on. Easily available, cheap, etc. With human studies, it costs money and so on, what have you. And that's part of the problem, in that not enough money is being spent on the technology. And that's why I mentioned that obviously whenever you have a scientific development or a technological development that is very closely aligned with political and economic sustainability, you're always going to get a conflict of interest. From the scientific side, they want to take their time and be able to do this properly before you implement. From a political and economic side, you want to get this out fast so that you are ahead of the game. Because remember, this is a global competition now, right? So I think that's why rats are generally easier to base this data on. But it does not mean there's no data on humans. It just means that it's limited in scope as of yet. Wallahu alam, at the end of the day. But this is what I can gather from the articles that I've been reading. Anything else, guys? So I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening, guys. I appreciate this. Hopefully we'll catch up next week, and we'll focus on another conversation related to Islam and science. Today was very scientific based, I get that, but you can imagine the kind of relationships this may have for Muslims, and how we can get very overzealous on either side, being either extremely skeptical or just taking this way too far on the other side of the spectrum. So thank you, and hopefully we'll do this again next Tuesday. So remember, it's every Tuesday, 5 p.m. UK time. So you can always catch us up there, inshallah. And it'll always be through Fatima Elizabeth Phrontistery's page. All right, guys. Thank you very much. You guys take it easy, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.